Good morning, ladies and gents. I am once again wearing headphones without a reason, and that's fine. I'm actually catch up on my news in the morning, so it's not that bad. Either way, so I'm going to pick up exactly where I left off last time when my internet cut out. I don't know what's been going wrong. I think there's something with my router, maybe. Sad because the thing is only a year old. At this point, I'm starting to chalk up routers as a once a year or once every other year kind of expense, because this is silly. They really shouldn't go out this quickly. But it's either that or Comcast, which, granted, knowing Comcast, maybe. So yesterday we left off trying to get rotation to smoothly pan to the final location. So what we want to do here is just finish that up, and then I've got what I call interfacing to do. It's figuring out the look and feel of a different part of the game, probably either inventory management or just accessing what a player is carrying, figuring out how that's going to be architectured and look. And then from there we'll go forwards into something a little more meaningful in terms of code. We'll actually scribble some code down in place, get some of this defined and running. So let's see here. Actually, I have no idea what I was up to. Rotation is this. Oh, I think I see what I was doing. So I want to rotate a certain amount per second. So that's why I have the rotation speed times delta time. That's essentially how much can I turn in a second. Then what I want to do is I want to make sure that if I don't actually need to rotate that much, that I don't. Because if we have to turn 5 units and instead can only turn, say, 3 units, we don't want to go 5. We'd overshoot every time. And those little offsets would start to really accumulate over time. So we're just going to put a little conditional statement here and say, well, if the rotation remaining is less than, and this should actually be the amount of rotation remaining is less than the rotation we're about to do, then we are going to go for the rotation remaining. Otherwise, we'll go for the rotation. There we go. And when we tell ourselves how much to rotate per moment, rotation already takes care of that for us. So this should work. I say should because, well, untested code is untested code, right? Interesting. So, did I not put in the right code for the the turning, rotation remaining? Oh, I did only for one direction. Whoops. Yeah. There we go. Grid node could not be found? Really? The file's right here. And it has the contents in here. What's going on? Does Unity see the issue? No. No, it really doesn't. So Visual Studio's freaking out about who knows what. Let's just reopen that because I can't imagine it being actually borked. Like mono-develop I can believe. That's actually really easy to believe. Visual Studio a little more difficult to believe. Yeah, no, see, it's fine. Whatever. I'm not one to judge. I am not one to judge at all. Alright, so something's going wrong because every time, and let's see, I need to find my party. So you can see my direction facing changes and my rotation remaining. Oh, it's because I have no rotation speed. Let's say it takes a second. So a rotation speed of 90 means I turn 90 degrees per second. Also, these are backwards, so let's fix that, because that's going to be really annoying. I say turn right and he turns left. I say turn left and they turn right. And then I say walk forwards and they walk backwards. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'm also not, don't mind me, just messing this whole thing up. Rotation remaining. We need to remove the rotation that we do actually spin. Otherwise, we'll just sit here and spin forever. Oh, and here's the other thing. If rotation remaining is less than 0, we need to add to it. Otherwise, we need to subtract from it. So if it's greater than 0, then we say we do that. Otherwise, we do that. There is a mathy way to do this, and I have to, oh no, I know this. What we do is we say we're going to subtract out here we go. We're going to subtract out the negative of rotation times rotation. There we go. I know there's a math way to handle this. So what essentially sine does is sine says if whatever the number is, if it's less than 0, it becomes -1. If it's greater than 0, it becomes 1. Otherwise, it returns 0. And so by doing the sign of the negative of the rotation, we're essentially saying, well, rotation remaining, if it's negative, we're adding, and if it's positive, we're subtracting. Hopefully. Did I get that backwards? I might have gotten that backwards. This, I think, should be actually a plus equals. I'm trying to remember this correctly. It's been so long. No. On the upside, you'll note he's... No, that's definitely not working. Whoa, game, what are you doing? Oh, did it overshoot? It looks like it's kind of overshooting and twitching. Oh, and here's the other thing. This statement here. Oh, let's figure out how we can do this right. Because I use its relative offsets, and it can be offset in the positive or negative direction, although I'm using an absolute value symbol, which that's the part that's kind of getting me right now. Is that if the absolute value of rotation remaining is less than the amount of rotation we're doing, oh, there's our problem. Once again, minor bugs in math. What I think is funny is that even if I turn in different directions, and you can see the rotation, oh, it's doing it in the other direction now, really? Oh, let's just iron out this logic. I'm kind of tired of fighting with this. Let's see here. So I say I turn left or I turn right. That adds a certain amount of rotation to rotation remaining. So I could either do that, or I could say it's a target that I'm aiming for. I mean, neither of those are terrible. So the only thing I want to keep track of is if I keep mashing left, they should literally spin until they stop. And they should spin in the correct direction, which is why I like the relative method. Rotation is the rotation speed times time, so now that's how fast we're going. So here's the amount we will turn in a frame. We then say, okay, if the amount of turning left is less than the amount of rotation, so on the upside, that smoothed out the issue we have where, nope, there's the twitch again. Man, I am just not on top of my math today. Something here is going terribly wrong. Okay, so it's always spinning in one direction because the rotation is always positive. If you look at this, rotation speed times delta time, that's always going to be positive. We don't change the case here, we don't change it here, and we definitely don't change it here. So that's always going to be. So let's fix that first, because right now I always spin to the right, and that's kind of annoying. So we have the rotation speed times the delta time. When I say turn to the left, it should, let's see. So I think I have these backwards yet again. Because when I turn to the left, I believe I should remove 90 degrees from my current facing. Let's see, left hand, right? So we go, for those who have never seen this before, this is essentially a left-hand system versus a right-hand system, where you have X, Y, and Z. It's kind of difficult to see, but you can essentially make your hand into an axis. And so for right-handed coordinate systems, you use your right hand. For left-handed coordinate systems, you use your left hand, where you end up with X, Y, and Z, as Unity would have it. I would technically like to have it X, Y, and Z, but that's how it goes. We're kind of stuck with the engine that we're using in terms of their coordinate system. So no matter what, we always want to be turning in the opposite direction, we always want to be turning the opposite amount of the amount of rotation remaining, so that we always are getting closer to that amount of rotation left. So that means we can remove this, because now rotation should honestly go always the opposite direction of whatever rotation is remaining. So I know the twitch is going to still be in there. But now, when I turn left or turn right, actually it works. It's a little slow, so let's crank this up. Let's say, woohoo, that'd be way too fast. So remember, this is number of degrees per second. This is something I have to mentally keep that in check, because honestly, the thing that bothers me is I'm used to radians per second. And anybody who works in the game industry will know that radians tends to be the way things work, but Unity has never been one to really respect given standards, even if they're mathematically proven to be better. Cool, so we've got rotation. And you'll note that it does tend to leave a little bit behind, specifically when I'm coming from the positive direction and wrapping around to the zero, kind of past the 360 degree point to 0. Technically I should stop on 0. You'll see I'm about 4 degrees off. That's so meaningless that if I do, let's see. Yeah, okay, so here's my view with the slight offset. Oh, and actually it's not even 3 degrees. It's 3 times 10 to the minus 5 degrees. So that's even more meaningless. That's pretty much floating point precision, being a pain in the ass. You'll note that instead of 90 degrees, I get 89.9, close enough. In terms of game development, I don't care. So, while I still have this working, let's commit this and talk about where I'm going to go next. And I keep doing that. I hit Windows D because that's my like default for I want to see the desktop these days. And the problem is that every time I do that, it nukes what's on my other monitor as well, which is where I have the chat and my preview of myself. It's a little silly, but I need to figure out either a way to get to display only on this monitor without doing the whole... Yeah, even that kills everything. Oh. It's spinterpolation, not interpolation, spinterpolation. And what was the other one? I think movement interpolation is in here too. Let's just check real quick. Yeah, also... So what does the rotation code look like? Alright, so the final form of this thing. It's final form. This is like the boss after you've taken off his previous 3 health bars worth of HP. So what we're going to do, we check the amount of rotation we can spin each turn. So that tends to be the amount of rotation remaining, and then we multiply that times the amount of time spent in a frame and our current rotation speed. So these two together will tell us how many degrees per frame we can turn. So if I can turn 180 degrees per second, that turns it down to a couple degrees per frame. We then multiply that with the opposite direction of the amount of rotation left. We check if we are going to go too far, and if we are going to go too far, we set that correctly. We remove the amount of rotation from our rotation remaining, and then we spin in that amount. We could put an if statement around here and say, well, if the rotation remaining is less than a certain amount. I honestly don't care. This is not a large chunk of code. It's not really worth adding more code, because more code means more bugs. Regardless of how well you code, if there is less there, it's less to maintain and easier to debug if anything goes wrong. In Corpse Law, yeah, I think Visual Studio is having some kind of identity namespacing crises. Because yeah, that was weird. I don't know what it thought it was doing, but it thought it was doing it. Okay, so we've got our party with our grid nodes and our... I'm just going to move the... no, I'm not. I'm going to leave it. I keep saying I'm going to do certain things and not doing it, and there's a good reason. I try not to make a ton of meaningless little changes. Otherwise, I'll just sit here and like make little tweaks all day long. Or I guess I should say all hour long. And then I'll just never get anything done. Alright, so we've got movement, we've got rotation. The next thing to do is figure out, A, where we want to go next with this, and also figure out just how we intend on doing other parts of this game that require... Oh god, Unity, what are you doing? Oh, Unity, why? Why, Unity? Must you? That is hilarious and frightening. Like, really frightening. The one thing I did note is that the color... Oh, okay, now it's fixed. Thanks, guys. The color was really, really bright on each of these. So I'm just going through and quickly fixing those, because that is not only going to annoy the heck out of me, but it's also going to make it incredibly difficult to read. And I like to try and save my eyes for, at bare minimum, the actual job I have that pays me the actual money that lets me stream for you guys. Specifically because I like streaming, and I'd rather continue doing so. There we go. A little darker will definitely help. I'm tempted to put outlines on all of this, but I know I'm going to put up a background eventually, so I don't really care. Corpse lol, the RTS was simply a large scope. I know I've said this in many streams at this point. I'm sure you guys are getting sick of hearing it, but essentially, the C++ RTS, the engine got discontinued, and the scope was just too much for one me to handle. So I took a step back from it. And honestly, it also came down to job is busy and other things are going on. This is easy because in Unity, I can toss a feature in an hour and feel like I've made significant progress. Which is the case, actually, with Unity. It's not too hard to do that. Alright, so let's see here. What else? So we've got our UI for the party. We've got basic movement. That stuff is fairly simple and straightforward. So we've got some basic elements in place, but in order to keep this moving, we need some more moving pieces. Otherwise, this isn't terribly interesting. Some directions we could go. So there's always combat. Combat is kind of the most basic of things. The other part is that aside from combat, we also have all the inventory and loot stuff. And that needs to happen kind of all at once. And part of me says that that needs to happen before we dive into combat. Otherwise, people are just punching each other with fists. And that might not be too terribly interesting. So maybe in order to make combat more interesting, we should dive into the inventory stuff first. Other things at some point I need to look into how to more easily place terrain. You'll note that, God, it's tiny. It's always, like, look at how huge this canvas is in game units, right? And then compare it to that little handle over here that has my game terrain on it. Granted, I don't have much game terrain, but still, there's not much to that. That's kind of insane. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. And yeah, Corpse Lol, it does suck when the engine did have a lot of potential. It essentially was that you traded off about a year or two of development of whatever was current in game engines, and you traded that off for a well-written engine. He wrote things so well, but since there was only one programmer on the engine, you would tend to be a year or two behind what every other modern engine had. So it was kind of the trade-off. He went to work on his own game. I think that's great. I wish him all the luck in the world making his own game. It just turned out he was spending more time working on the engine than the game itself, which is fine. He decides he wants to make a game. He's the one making the engine. And also with engines like Unity out, it's kind of difficult to compete, honestly. So let's see. We've got the terrain, we've got this stuff. Let's look into the idea of inventory, because inventory is an interesting thing. Sorry, I disappeared a little because there's a teensy-weensy little dog. Sorry, tiny puppies are so cute. So cute. Let's see. Inventory. Right. Not getting distracted here. So we need a few things before we can call inventory an in thing. One is we need to be able to define an object, right? We need to be able to hop in and say, okay, here is a dagger, here is a sword, here is plate mail, right? We need to be able to define an item. So just the data that comes with it, whether that's name, the icon image, the stats behind it, what does it augment, what type of weapon is it, does it have any special properties, does it do anything cool when you hit people with it, stuff like that is all things that we need to keep in mind. So there's one piece of information that we need to handle. So we've got what I've been thinking of as item definitions, right? You need to define that, and you don't really need or want to copy that information. You can always have an instance of the item that refers to the definition, and you don't duplicate a ton of data in that case. Now, granted, that's an idea for a modern engine. Unity has a very different structure than most engines, so I'm not sure if the definition idea is going to hold up or not, but we'll see. I definitely like it in terms of what it means for items, because we could then just load in a bunch of JSON blobs, and the JSON blobs can have the pure stats. Just how much damage do things do? How much gold are they worth? What is their name? What's their image? That can all live in a data file, and then from there we can go to the instance of the object will hold the extra code or the meaty bits. I definitely like that. The downside being that it's hard to have custom code attached to each of these. Given the amount of reflection inside Unity, it's not incredibly difficult, but it's a little difficult. And with Unity's serialization aspects, it's honestly a little overkill sometimes to use JSON blobs. So maybe, let's see, maybe we can do this in Unity's purview. Maybe we can find a way to get this done in a way that works with Unity's architecture. Because I found lately that it's so much easier to use the engine's architecture than to fight with it and try and do things my way. Because while I might be more familiar with my way, the engine is, I don't know, it's stubborn. It's more stubborn than I am. I'll give it that much. Yeah. So prefabs, I'm gonna start in on some interfacing. We're gonna start with some basic stuff. A character holding items, right? That might not be a bad place to start. Figure out how inventory is going to work, how I'm going to hold things, pick things up, and then once I've got that down, it shouldn't be too difficult to take the next step to create an interface to inspect and see what's in your inventory and eventually equip things. So let's see. We've got our grid node, we've got trees. I want to go the Unity way with this. Oop, I did not mean to create a new script. I meant to create a new folder. And I'm going to call it items. This is going to be a giant hierarchy, or not hierarchy, a giant file structure thing later. I'm not solving that now. We're just going to make a script, and we're going to call it, I don't know, standard dagger. I don't even know if I want the word standard in there. I'll just write dagger for now, and we can go from there. Yes, thank you, Unity. I definitely. All right. So, Corpselol is asking, do I use Unity over, say, Monogame because it goes faster to develop, or do I think Monogame lacks something? So part of it is part of it is my familiarity. I'm really familiar with. Hey, there's my pup. I'm really familiar with Unity. I work with it every day at work for 8 hours a day. I'm kind of used to it. So that's part of it. The other thing is that Unity does have some decent bits and pieces that I like over Monogame, specifically the editor and the fact that it's not reliant on Microsoft deprecated technology. Specifically, I'm talking about the serialized content that comes with Monogame. So yeah, I just kind of like it in general. It works out a little better for me. Sorry guys, gotta stretch sometimes. Always good to keep moving a little bit while you're at your computer. Otherwise, you tend to tense up and things get kind of nasty and knotted later on. Okay, so we have a dagger. Obvious thing here. Question becomes, how is a player character going to hold things? I could say you hold things by having a mono behavior attached to things. But that seems like a messy way to go about this. I have a puppy outside. Anyway, sorry, distractions. Alright, so in terms of what we want to do here, I kind of want to say like an array of inventory item, or a list of inventory items might be one way to do this. So we just say there's some, there's some interface of things called inventory, and we handle them in that way. That's kind of one way to deal with it. We could also go so far as to have literal slots for every item. If the item is, if it has certain stats, if it has whatever, we can still fit anything of the inventory base into each of these slots. And actually, what I'm thinking, and I'm curious if Unity will let me do this. Let's try something crazy. We're going to toss an abstract class into the mix. We're going to do something a little crazy with it. We're going to see if, okay, dagger is going to be subclassing from inventory item. An inventory item subclasses from mono behavior. So the question becomes, when can I hand somebody an inventory item even though it's technically a dagger? Can I pass them a class that is a inheritant? Is that the right word? Also, the other thing I want to mark here is that this should be abstract, because we don't want to be able to actually instantiate an inventory item. We need to only instantiate things that are derived from inventory item. And we'll say this is the equipped left hand slot. I don't think I should use the word equipped. We'll just call it the left hand slot and the right hand slot. And I'm curious if this will let us put the dagger into the hand, or if it'll just be too much and the game won't like it, or Unity specifically won't like it. So here's a player character. You can see they have the left and right hand slot, so that's in our favor. Yes, it will. Okay, Morphix already has an answer for me. God, you guys are good at this. Yeah, it works, but hot reload, unless the item is a scriptable object or a mono behavior, will reset the item to the abstract type. Interesting. That kind of tells me a little bit about, honestly, how they do things on the inside of their engine, too. Interesting. So, okay, what I'm essentially saying I should do, and this is why this mess won't work currently. If I take a dagger and attach it to the party, first off, you'll note that here's our dagger at the bottom. Let's see, can I grab? Yeah, I can grab. So you can see I can actually assign it to an instance here. That's really interesting. So essentially I can, but do I really want to? Is that the way to go about this? This is what I get for not completely thinking up an entire system before I start to stream. And honestly, it's a little difficult sometimes with the whole, 9-to-5 job, and then streaming every morning too. But that is just a bad excuse. Honestly, that's not even something I'm able to hide behind. So we've got, okay. Let's just toss a header in here because we can. Inventory, go. Because I do think inventory should be split off into its own section, and it definitely should have equipped slots versus just things that are in your bag. And so Morphix is telling me about something I've never something I've never looked into before, is the idea of a scriptable object. Because honestly, I've never even heard of it. You may have just taught me something completely new today, Morphix. Thank you. And of course, their tutorial is nothing but a giant video. I'm not a fan of video tutorials. They're just too hard for me to parse through. I don't want to have to sit there and watch somebody move mouse and click, and then move mouse and click, and do this and then type code slowly. I want to be able to just see the end product, see what I should be looking for, and try and use it. If I hit switch to manual, okay. Class that allows you to store large quantities of shared data independent from script instances. Consider you made a prefab with a script that has an array of 1 million integers. I mean, that's Google amounts of data, but we'll gloss over that. The array occupies 4 megabytes of memory. Really? 1 million ints? No, you guys are wrong. 1 million ints, unless you store it really, really well and pack it really nicely, that's like 30 megs. Oh, okay, that's what they're saying. If you created... What? No. Yeah, their math is just wrong here. Never mind. Scriptable object is basically... Morphix, you're just my teacher today. You are now my new tutor on scriptable objects, I guess. Scriptable object is basically a class that derives from unity.object. Okay, I thought unity.object was just their, like, most bland, this is an object, but it doesn't really do anything. Base class for all objects Unity can reference. Any public variable you make that derives from object gets shown in the inspector as a drop target. Ah, okay. Allowing you to set the value from the GUI. So that's why our inventory item abstract class can be used in Unity's editor. Mono behavior is a kind of object. Object things show up in the editor. That's a neat thing to know. Which means it gets, okay, so a scriptable object gets serializable like a full object by Unity, and references are kept. List of abstract gets saved as an individual item, and you can create an asset file that stores your scriptable object. Interesting. I'm going to do a little more reading just to make sure I wrap my head around this correctly. And I'm going to get my dog in because he's barking. One sec. Woof. Hey, learning things is friggin' awesome, alright? I don't know, headphones, I don't know, they're a thing for me. If I need it. He didn't make me forget about dog. Dog just starts reminding me that he's out there. The intended use case for scriptable object is to reduce memory usage by avoiding copies of values. Okay, so scriptable object is literally my idea of what I should be doing for these item definitions. They should all be scriptable objects. A dagger should be a scriptable object that has certain stats and maybe certain logic to it. The logic is the part I don't fully understand. But at the same time, I think that this is the right path. Morphix is leading me down the correct way towards what I think I want to be doing. When working with scriptable object references in the inspector, you can double-click the reference to open the inspector. You can also create a custom editor to define the look of the inspector, yada yada. Once you've defined it, you can use the Create Asset menu attribute. Create Asset menu attribute to make it easy to create custom assets using your class. Interesting. I think I'm understanding this. I'm not grokking it yet, but I think I understand the basics of where this is going. For example, dagger shouldn't be an inventory item. It should be a scriptable object. And what it essentially will do is the same thing that this is the information that every dagger has. And the neat thing is this, because it's a class, can have the oh, did I just not read it in terms of their math? Whoops. But no, I did the math. A million integers is not 4 megabytes. 10 instances that has a reference that holds this. Like, this math is right. The 10 instances of a prefab that has a reference to a scriptable object holds 4 megabytes of data. Would total to roughly 4 megabytes and not 40. That makes sense. But we have a million integers that lives inside of a script, and somehow that array only occupies... Oh, what? No, my thought is still right. So, okay, 1 million integers, right? Yeah, that's a million. And say they're 32-bit ints. So, okay, we know that we have now 32 million bits. There's 1,024... Oh, first off, divided by 8, bits in a byte, divided by 1024. And am I really wrong? I am wrong. Okay, never mind. Forget that. Forget that. They are. I forgot to do the divided by 8 to switch from bits to bytes, and that threw me off. They're correct. Their math is correct. Never mind. I'm being touchy about something that I should not care about. Wow. Dog is done with food already. Just empty bowl. Alright, so Dagger's scriptable object. I can have a million ints in only 4 megabytes. But we're not going to do that because that's so overkill. Let's say, for example, we want an int that is our to hit bonus. We'll want another int that is our, let's see here. We'll want our to hit bonus, and then we'll also want our just damage dice, probably. So the one thing we could do is we could go a little ham on this. We could go in the vein of how most RPGs handle dice. Specifically, you say D6 is a single 6-sided die. 2d6 is 2 6-sided die. I don't know if I want to go that ham-handed into the RPG terminology and tactics yet, but that's something to keep in mind for later. So Morphix is saying, in this case, since I am using scriptable objects, because it is probably the right way to go, I should make an abstract class for items and then derive Dagger from it. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be a little specific here, I'm going to have inventory items not based on just purely item. So everything will subclass off of item first. So inventory item is a thing, and it's probably all going to be scriptable objects. I'm going to try and get this right the first time. We'll see if I can manage it. From there, we're going to split off into types. For example, we are going to, and this is where inventory item is going to get a little messy, but we'll see if we can do this right. We'll have another abstract class that is going to be a weapon item that is based off of inventory item. And I really wish Visual Studio would not do that to my programming. It really bothers me when they mess with my white space. So now we've got weapon items. And we're also obviously going to want armor items, right? So an inventory item needs what? Every inventory item needs probably some string of a name, right? Or we'll call it item name, just to differentiate it from the object name, because we want to make sure that there's no craziness going on here in terms of things that bounce to things that override each other. So, okay, we have an inventory item. We probably also want some kind of enum. And I'm actually going to put this enum at the top, which is our equip slot. And this honestly shouldn't just be an enum, but should be a flag. because obviously you don't want to only be able to hold a sword in your left hand. Having a sword in your right hand would be kind of awesome as well. So then we have left hand, left hand, right hand. What else? We've got torso slot. We'll probably have a head slot, head. Let's just go from top to bottom, right? Head, torso. I know torso's in here twice. Don't worry, guys. I'll get it. Head, torso, left, right hand. We could go shoulders. I don't care about shoulders. This is not an MMO. Your shoulder armor is part of your chest armor. That's that. Left hand, right hand. So the things, maybe bracers, definitely rings. Rings, hands. Oh, right, legs, feet. We'll leave it at that for now. Actually, no, one more thing. Necklace. You always need the jewelry slots. Always, always, always. Jewelry slots are like the neat thing that's always that kind of makes life a little interesting, right? Having a bunch of like little rings that do cool things, having a necklace that keeps your character alive when they get stabbed is a neat thing. Let's hope I don't forget to separate the files. Oh, I don't. I definitely won't. Just one of those eventually things that I need to do. So, okay, inventory has an item. They also will all need a portrait of some kind. So I'm going to call it, I'm just going to go for texture 2D for now. I might have to switch this to sprite. We'll see. And you'll note I'm prefixing everything here with item so that it's easy to find. Everything in weapon will likely be either prefixed with weapon or so obvious that I can't miss it. You know, unless I'm like hit upside the head with a brick today. I won't forget that, oh, weapons have a 2-hit, and weapons have a damage roll, and weapons have other things. God, I'm going to have a lot of tiny little scripts, I think. Let's see, what else? What else? What else? What else? Is there anything else? Also, since these are, well, I'm going to have to think about this a little. Because we've got inventory, we've got weapons. Weapons have, I'll call it the hit bonus, just for now. Is there some way? Part of me wants a range, an integer minimum and an integer maximum. Almost like a pair. But I don't think Unity has a pair of ints in a struct. Is there an int-based class like Vector2? No, there really isn't. Okay, well, I'm going to make one because I want to make one. Well, do I? That actually might not show up in the inspector terribly well unless I go the full range and say, oh, here's your minimum, here's your maximum, here's how it should look in the inspector. Is that something I really want to fight with right now? No, I want to get more item stuff done. I want to get as much of this item stuff done as I can. Let's not dive into armor for now. And actually, I'm going to... We're just going to keep it to left hand and right hand to start, and then we'll build it outwards. So I'll leave them there in comment form, but as I add more things, we're going to say, okay, well now, we only want this to go here, we only want this to go here. We'll start to fill it out, and as we say, oh, I've added helmets, okay, we'll open up the head slot. So a player character has the following. Weird. So inventory items for left and right hand. Is that really the best way to do it? Is the only thing I'm curious about. So I could make an inventory slot class that can hold inventory items And then the slot could have the flag that matches? That seems a little too... I'm trying to data drive this a little too much, and it's interesting to see just how well or poorly it is kind of going. Some of this is just the fact that I don't know how a data-driven system inside of Unity looks. Because Unity's idea of data driving is really weird for me. Like, having a bunch of publics like this technically drives me crazy. But at the same time, I'm actually not sure if this is the right way to be going about this. So, okay, a dagger is a kind of weapon item. So that means if I go back into Unity here, so you can see item icon is already a thing. A dagger also has its item icon. This is an interesting architecture thing, to see a data-driven system purely through decorators. Like, trying to write something purely using decorators is a really weird experience so far. Not saying it's a bad one, it's just weird. I'm so used to doing things in a very different fashion that wrapping my head around certain parts of this system, it's causing me to have to do some mental gymnastics. So let's see here. We've got that. So Morphix is suggesting creating a dictionary of key values where the slot and the item are the pairs. And then from there, I would be able to read through the dictionary and say, okay, are you holding this item? Is it here? Are you holding this item? Is it here? That's definitely one way to do it. I'm trying to see how much of this I can fit within Unity's system, because that's the one piece here, is that if I can fit more of this into Unity's data system, the happier I will be. Because what I eventually want to do is to be able to click on the party, and I can see somebody is holding some item. For example, I can dump a dagger into this. See? I need to dump the dagger onto the party first. Oh wait, no. Can't add a script behavior dagger. It needs to derive from mono behavior. Interesting. So I'd have to derive from a mono behavior at some point. And then from there, I'd have to have the mono behavior hold the script, essentially. Or Morphix is saying I should create an asset file. Create, import asset. I really need to figure out this whole like asset file thing. Unity asset file. Create scriptable object asset. Sweet. That's a weird bit of documentation. So I just for kicks, decided to look this up. So here's the scriptable object. You can see them trying to save their entry out programmatically. Is that really the way you have to do that? Create menu. Okay, I just have to add an attribute to it. So let's try that. And I'm going to try it out on the dagger, and then I'll shift it around until I find a spot that I think it works. Create asset menu. Well, that's easy. Mark a script object derived type to be automatically listed in the assets create submenu. Oh, and here's dagger. Create dagger. It's going to be a new, oh, holy shit. I think, so everything I think just clicked. I think it just set in. So this would be our standard dagger, or we'll call it the starting dagger. Right, and this is just pure, my mind exploding. So we know it bases off of the script dagger, so any special properties are going to be enlisted in this script. And then, you know, here's the name. Here's our start dagger. Our item icon. I actually don't have any icons. I need to go pull those icons from the set. But that'll be next. The hit bonus, we'll say it's a +2. The damage, we'll say it's a D4. Holy crap, that's amazing. Like, Morphix, you just blew my mind. This is freaking amazing. And then I create instances of the CS file. Wow, I don't... okay, I'm curious here. I'm just curious now. I want to see something. I want to look at the innards of what an asset file is. Now, granted, they're probably going to batch it down into a tiny little file. It probably will be nothing but a bunch of bytes. But if it isn't a bunch of bytes, I want to see this. Specifically, prefabs, right? That's where I was. Prefabs, items, asset. Okay, yeah, it is packed down into... Oh, that's interesting, though. You can see some of the information getting stored there. Here's its name. I can't actually see anything else, but you can see the bits and pieces of information falling into place. Here's the item name. Here's a pointer to a texture 2D that we call item icon. Int bonus, damage, like the variables are here. That's really weird and really cool. Alright, sorry. Weird tangent. Point made. This is awesome. I now understand what I'm supposed to be doing here, though. And what I'm currently doing is incorrect. So, guys, I'm about out of time, by the way. I just happened to glance at the time and note that I have to run off in a few minutes. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I'm happy to kind of finish up and do what I can. I'm essentially wrapping my head around the idea of scriptable objects and assets and how the two kind of get merged. We have our equip slot, so and also one obvious equip slot, none, right? That's something that most people never really consider, is when you have an enumeration, having the enumeration none and having the enumeration maximum is also kind of an interesting way to go. Let's see. Yeah. Guys, thank you for joining me. Today has been eye-opening, at the very least. It definitely has caused me some thought on how I should be architecting things in the future. Morphix, a giant shout out and thank you to you for showing me this awesome bit of tech that I never knew existed inside of Unity. Oh man. Yeah, no, my mind is blown. I really need to just figure out how everything is going to play out now, because asset files and scriptable objects are freaking amazing. Oliver says, question, what would you recommend I should learn C#? Would you recommend I learn... okay, there we go. I need to say that correctly. Would you recommend I should learn C#? I already know other programming languages. I like C#. It's one of my favorite languages, partially because it's been engineered for a more modern time. That's really the big thing. Microsoft has clearly learned from lessons in Java, in C++, and oddly enough, even in JavaScript, right? There are elements of a ton of languages they looked at and said, this is really freaking awesome. They took bits of Python even and said, can we do Pythonic things in here? Like, we won't use the Python formatting and syntax, but we want to do Pythonic things in here. We want to have the power of stuff like threads being a first-class citizen. We want you know, dictionaries to be easily read. There's some really neat stuff inside C#, and Microsoft has done a great job bringing all this together and saying, this is the information that we know is cool. It's neat to be able to have anonymous functions. It's neat being able to have all this stuff. We know it doesn't work in C++. We're going to make a new language called C# that can do it. Yes, I make a good ad for C#. I know. Microsoft should totally hire me, right? I don't know. I've already been paid money by Microsoft for other things. Specifically, the game I put up on Xbox Live Indie Arcade. But, words aside, C# is a great language to learn, especially if you're looking to use it as a step into some of the harder languages like C++ or C, or if you're working your way into Java, C# is a good step in. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've enjoyed, and it's a powerful scripting language at bare minimum. Even if you do nothing else with it, it's a great scripting language, and if you compile it down to bytecode, guess what? It runs well as well, so... Alright guys, thank you again. I gotta take off. I gotta get to work, drink coffee, write code, make games so that kids can learn. That is what I do these days. So thank you guys again. For those of you who are joining me for the first time or have seen me before but want to continue to catch each of my streams, I am on every morning, not Monday, I'll say Tuesday through Friday. Mondays are a little iffy. Tuesday through Friday, at bare minimum, I am on between 8 and 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you want to make sure you catch all of my streams, even the weird ones on the weekend at the unsubscribed hours when I just kind of decide I want to stream, or my weird Monday stream where I don't know when that's going to happen, just hit the follow button below and you will get emails every time I go online. Other than that, thanks for joining me, guys, and I will catch you all next time.